The rain had been falling since early morning, the kind that soaked through jackets and made people walk faster, heads down, eyes fixed on the ground. Outside a large office building, employees hurried past the entrance, anxious to escape the cold drizzle and get inside. Umbrellas bumped into each other, shoes splashed through shallow puddles, and no one wanted to stop for anything, or anyone. Stephen stepped out of the building just as his shift ended. He pulled his thin jacket tighter around his shoulders and glanced toward the bus stop across the street. That's when he noticed her. A woman sat near the curb in a wheelchair, struggling to move forward. One of the front wheels was twisted at an odd angle, refusing to roll properly. Every time she pushed, the chair jerked sideways. Rainwater streamed down her sleeves, and her hands shook, not just from the cold, but from frustration. People walked right past her. Some glanced for a second, then looked away. Others pretended not to notice at all. Stephen slowed down. He hesitated only for a moment before turning back. He didn't know who she was. He didn't ask where she worked or why she was there. All he saw was someone who needed help. He said gently, stepping closer, "Your will looks stuck." She looked up, surprised. "Oh, it's okay. I don't want to trouble you. It's raining." Stephen smiled faintly. "That's all right. Let me take a look." Without thinking twice, he set his bag down on the wet pavement and knelt in the rain. Water soaked through his pants as he examined the damaged wheel. The woman watched him, clearly uncomfortable that someone would inconvenience himself like this for a stranger. "You really don't have to do this," she said again. Stephen shook his head. "If I can help, I should." As the rain grew heavier and people continued to pass them by, Stephen focused on the broken wheel, completely unaware that this simple act of kindness was about to change his life forever. What Stephen didn't know was, the woman in that wheelchair was the new boss. The rain grew heavier, drumming against the pavement and blurring the outlines of the tall buildings around them. Stephen's hair was already soaked, water dripping from the edges of his jacket as he crouched beside the wheelchair. He tried turning the stuck wheel again, but it refused to move. "I'm sorry," the woman said softly. "I didn't expect anyone to stop. You'll get sick standing out here." Stephen gave a small shrug. "I've worked in worse weather than this." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small multi-tool he usually carried for quick fixes at work. Using his fingers and the tiny wrench, he loosened a bent bolt that seemed to be causing the problem. His hands were cold, stiff, and slippery from the rain, but he stayed focused. A security guard standing near the building entrance cleared his throat loudly. "Hey, you," he called out to Stephen. "You're off the clock. You should get inside before you catch a cold." Stephen looked up briefly. "Just a minute," he replied. "I'm almost done." The guard frowned. "That's not your responsibility." Stephen didn't argue. He simply went back to work. The woman watched this exchange carefully. "You don't have to listen to him," she said. "I can call someone." Stephen smiled again, the same calm, unbothered expression. "It's okay. I don't mind." A few employees slowed down as they passed, curious but unwilling to stop. Some whispered to each other. Others shook their heads as if Stephen were wasting his time. No one offered help. The rain soaked through Stephen's shoes now, his socks squishing slightly as he shifted his weight. Still, he kept adjusting the wheel, straightening the bent metal little by little. "You're very kind," the woman said quietly. "Most people don't stop anymore." Stephen tightened the bolt and tested the wheel again. It moved, just a little. He nodded to himself. "Kindness doesn't cost anything," he said. "And sometimes, all someone needs is a few extra minutes." The woman studied his face, as if committing it to memory. Stephen had no idea that his few extra minutes, spent kneeling in the rain, were being silently measured by someone who held the power to change his future. Stephen pressed down gently on the front of the wheelchair, testing the wheel again. It still wobbled, scraping slightly against the wet pavement. The rain showed no signs of stopping. In fact, it seemed heavier now, cold drops running down his neck and soaking his collar completely. "I think it got hit pretty hard," he said, mostly to himself. "But it should hold once I straighten this part." The woman watched him closely. "You do this kind of work a lot?" He nodded. "Yeah. Maintenance. Fixing things people don't usually notice, until they stop working." She smiled faintly. "That sounds important." Stephen chuckled softly. "Most days, it doesn't feel that way." He adjusted the bolt again, fingers numb from the cold. A passing car splashed through a puddle nearby, sending muddy water dangerously close to them. Stephen instinctively shifted to shield the wheelchair from the spray, even though it meant getting splashed himself. "You really don't have to keep going," the woman said, concern clear in her voice. "You've already done more than enough." Stephen paused and looked up at her. "If it were me," he said, "I'd hope someone would stop too." There was a moment of silence between them, one that felt heavier than the rain. The woman studied his face, noticing the sincerity there. No impatience. No expectation of praise. Just quiet determination. "What's your name?" she asked. "Stephen," he replied. "Yours?" She hesitated for just a second. "Let's say Claire." Stephen didn't question it. Names didn't matter to him right now. He gave the wheel one final adjustment and slowly spun it. This time, it rolled smoothly. His face brightened. "There we go." The woman's eyes widened. She carefully pushed the wheelchair forward. It moved perfectly. "Oh," she breathed, relieved. "You fixed it." Stephen stood up, rain dripping from his sleeves, and stepped back to give her space. "It should be fine now. But I'd still recommend getting it checked properly." She smiled warmly. "Thank you, Stephen. Truly." As he picked up his bag, ready to leave, she looked at him with a thoughtful expression, one filled with curiosity, respect, and something more. Stephen walked away, cold, soaked, and completely unaware that this small moment of kindness had already begun to echo far beyond this rainy sidewalk. Stephen took a few steps away before the woman's voice stopped him. "Stephen," she called out gently. He turned back, surprised. Rain streaked down his face as he waited. "I just wanted to say thank you again," she said. "Not many people would have done what you did today." He gave an awkward smile. "It was nothing, really." She shook her head. "It wasn't nothing." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The noise of the rain filled the space between them. People continued rushing in and out of the building, unaware of the quiet exchange happening just a few feet away. The woman looked down at her hands, then back up at Stephen. "Do you work here?" she asked. "Yes," he replied. "I help keep the place running. Fix things when they break." She nodded thoughtfully. "Do you like your job?" Stephen considered the question. "I like helping," he said honestly. "Even when no one notices." Something in his answer seemed to strike her. Her expression softened, and a small smile appeared, one that carried more weight than polite gratitude. "You have a good heart," she said. "That matters more than most people realize." Stephen felt slightly embarrassed. Compliments always made him uncomfortable. "I just did what felt right." She reached into her bag and pulled out a business card. For a second, Stephen thought she was going to hand it to him, but instead, she tucked it back in. "Maybe we'll meet again," she said cryptically. Stephen laughed lightly. "In a better situation, hopefully. And better weather." She smiled at that. "Hopefully." With one last nod, she turned her wheelchair and smoothly rolled toward the covered entrance of the building. Stephen watched for a moment, making sure the wheel stayed straight. It did. Satisfied, he turned and headed toward the bus stop, rain still pouring down. His shoes were soaked, his clothes heavy, and his hands numb, but his conscience felt light. Behind him, the woman paused under the shelter and looked back. Her gaze followed Stephen as he walked away, a thoughtful expression on her face, one filled with curiosity, respect, and quiet certainty. She didn't call out again. She didn't reveal who she was. But she remembered his name. And she remembered his kindness. Stephen, meanwhile, boarded the bus, unaware that the woman he had helped without hesitation was about to re-enter his life in a way he could never have imagined. The next morning, the rain had stopped, but the memory of it still clung to Stephen. His shoes were only half dry as he stepped into the building, the faint squeak of damp soles echoing against the polished floor. He adjusted his jacket and headed toward the maintenance room, expecting an ordinary workday. But something felt different. Groups of employees stood in the hallways instead of at their desks. Quiet conversations buzzed through the air, mixed with curiosity and excitement. "Did you hear?" someone whispered as Stephen passed. "The new boss is arriving today." Stephen paused briefly. He had heard rumors before, but management changes rarely affected him. He worked behind the scenes. New bosses came and went, and his job stayed the same. He kept walking. A message crackled over the intercom, calling everyone to the main conference hall. Stephen hesitated. Maintenance staff weren't usually required at these meetings, but the tone sounded firm, mandatory. Inside the hall, rows of chairs were filling quickly. Executives in sharp suits took the front seats. Stephen slipped quietly into the back row, standing near the wall, careful not to draw attention. A few people glanced at his still wet shoes and wrinkled jacket, then looked away. The room fell silent as a senior manager stepped onto the stage. "Good morning, everyone," he began. "As you know, today marks an important moment for our company. We are proud to introduce our new director." A door at the side of the stage opened. Stephen felt his breath catch. The woman rolled into the room in a wheelchair, her posture confident, her expression calm and composed. Her hair was neatly styled now, her clothes elegant and professional. She looked completely different from the rain-soaked stranger from the day before, yet unmistakably the same. Stephen froze. "No, it can't be." The room erupted in applause. People stood. Some smiled nervously, others with admiration. The woman raised a hand gently, signaling for silence. Her eyes scanned the room, and then they found Stephen at the back. For just a fraction of a second, recognition flashed across her face. She smiled. Stephen's heart pounded. Heat rushed to his face. He looked around, wondering if anyone else had noticed. The senior manager continued, "Please welcome Ms. Claire Reynolds." Stephen swallowed hard. Claire. The name she had given him in the rain echoed in his mind. As the applause faded, Claire adjusted the microphone. "Before we begin," she said calmly, "there's something I'd like to share." Her gaze returned to Stephen. And in that moment, he realized that the kindness he had offered without a second thought was about to be revealed to everyone in the room. The room grew quiet as Claire rested her hands on the podium. Her calm presence filled the space, commanding attention without effort. Dozens of eyes followed her gaze as it moved toward the back of the hall, toward Stephen. "Yesterday," she began, "I came to this building for the first time." A few people nodded, assuming this was part of her introduction. "It was raining heavily," she continued. "I was outside, alone, with a wheelchair that suddenly stopped working." Murmurs spread through the room. Some employees shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "I struggled," Claire said. "Not because I didn't know what to do, but because no one stopped to help." Stephen felt his chest tighten. He knew what was coming, but he still wasn't ready. "People walked past me," she went on, her voice steady. "Some looked. Most didn't. And I don't blame them. We all get busy." Her eyes settled on Stephen again. But one person did stop. A hush fell over the room. "He didn't ask who I was," Claire said. "He didn't ask if helping me would benefit him. He didn't even hesitate." Several heads turned toward the back of the hall. "He knelt in the rain. He got soaked. He fixed my wheelchair with his own hands, and then walked away without expecting anything in return." Stephen wished the floor would open up and swallow him. His ears burned as whispers filled the room. "That man," Claire said, her voice warm now, "is standing right there." All eyes locked onto Stephen. A few gasps escaped. Someone whispered, "The maintenance guy?" Stephen shook his head slightly, embarrassed. "It was nothing," he muttered, though no one could hear him. Claire smiled. "It was everything." She paused, letting the moment settle. "I tell you this because titles don't define character," she said. "Job roles don't reveal integrity. How we treat people when no one is watching, that's who we really are." The room erupted in applause. Some people stood. Others looked at Stephen with new respect. Claire concluded, "I'm proud to work with people like him." Stephen stood frozen, overwhelmed, not by recognition, but by the realization that a simple act of kindness had echoed louder than any achievement. Do you believe true leaders notice small acts of kindness? Type respect in the comments if you agree. The applause didn't fade quickly. It rolled through the conference hall in waves, louder and longer than any welcome speech. Stephen stood awkwardly at the back, unsure of what to do with his hands, his face still warm with embarrassment. He had fixed a wheel, not delivered a speech or saved a life. Yet somehow, the entire room was standing because of him. Claire waited patiently for the noise to settle before speaking again. "I didn't share this story to single Stephen out," she said. "I shared it because it represents the culture I want this company to stand for." People leaned forward, listening closely. "A workplace is not defined by job titles or corner offices," Claire continued. "It's defined by how we treat one another, especially when kindness isn't convenient." She turned slightly toward Stephen. "Stephen, thank you for reminding me of that on my very first day." Stephen nodded, still speechless. After the meeting ended, employees surrounded him, not with questions, but with gratitude. Some apologized for walking past the day before. Others shook his hand, thanking him for setting an example they hadn't realized they needed. Later that afternoon, Stephen was called into a small office. Claire was there, along with a senior manager. Stephen's nerves returned immediately, old habits of expecting trouble. Instead, Claire smiled. "I won't embarrass you further," she said gently. "But I want you to know something." She explained that his attitude, quiet, dependable, compassionate, was exactly the kind of leadership she valued. She offered him an opportunity, additional training, a new role with more responsibility, and a voice in improving workplace accessibility. Stephen was stunned. "I just did what felt right," he said. Claire nodded. "And that's why it matters." The story didn't stay inside the building. Someone had recorded Claire's speech. Within hours, it spread online. Comments poured in from around the world. "This restored my faith in humanity. Real leadership recognizes real character. Kindness always comes back." But Stephen didn't change. The next morning, he showed up the same way he always had, on time, ready to work, willing to help. The difference was subtle but powerful. People noticed. They held doors longer. They offered help sooner. They remembered names. And Stephen's simple act, fixing a wheelchair in the rain, became a reminder that kindness doesn't need an audience to matter. If this story touched your heart, type kindness in the comments and subscribe for more stories where small actions create life-changing moments.